If you've been in the aquarium hobby for any amount of time, you've probably caught yourself thinking, maybe I just need one more tank, or I should probably upgrade my filter again, or even, maybe this new light will be better for my plants. And let's be honest, there's always that urge to add just a few more shrimp or fish. Between tank expansions, equipment upgrades, and chasing perfection, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking more is always better. But sometimes, the real secret to success is knowing when to stop. So today, let's break down 4 habits that can quietly hold us back and take on the question many of us eventually face. When is enough enough? Let's dive right in. Habit number 1. Multiple tank syndrome. It always starts with one. A simple little shrimp tank or community aquarium that's maybe 5 or 10 gallons. But then you see a new shrimp species, a new color variant, or even a fish you've always wanted to try, and suddenly, you're setting up a second tank. Then a third, maybe a nano tank on your desk, a 55-gallon in the corner of your room, and before you know it, you've come down with a case of multiple tank syndrome. I can personally relate to this. When I first started back in 2021, my first tank was a 10-gallon filled with guppies and ghost shrimp. 2 months later, I bought another one so I could get a betta. Fast forwarding to the present, and I now have 14 tanks, 7 of which contain various species of shrimp and fish, while the other 7 are being used to grow plants. I'm sure most of you who've been in this hobby for a while can relate to my situation. Having this many tanks has its pros and cons. For one, I get to keep a variety of shrimp and fish species, and as a content creator, I always have something to talk about. Second, if a tank's ecosystem ever crashes or the tank itself springs a leak or cracks, I'll always have a backup in place. Third, more tanks mean more aquascaping opportunities, which is great for experimentation and expanding my creativity. Fourth, with smaller bioloads per tank, I can have more predictable maintenance. But of course, there are some downsides. First, more tanks equals more maintenance. This can be extremely time-consuming, especially depending on what's going on in your personal life. Plus, there can be a lot of prep work in the weeks leading up to a vacation. Second, having more tanks means there's an overall higher cost to get them set up. Equipment, plants, hardscape, and livestock have to be purchased, which can run into the hundreds of dollars very quickly. Third, the more tanks you have, the more your attention gets divided. It can get harder to give each tank the care and observation it deserves, and subtle issues might go unnoticed. Fourth, there's the risk of burnout. Your hobby can start feeling like a chore if you're overwhelmed by too many tanks. This can often lead to neglect, which can harm your shrimp and fish, and even make you want to get out of the hobby completely. Finally, multiple tanks can take up a lot of space. Racks may have to be built to save room, and electrical cords and other equipment can easily overrun your space. For those of you just getting into the hobby, this is a very real possibility. Knowing when to say enough and finding balance is key, not to avoiding multiple tank syndrome entirely, but to making sure it doesn't become overwhelming and steal the joy from the hobby. Habit number 2. Equipment addiction. It's tempting to believe that adding more equipment will automatically make your shrimp tank or aquarium better. You start with a basic sponge filter, then you see a YouTube video about hang-on back filters or canister filters and think, maybe I should upgrade. Next thing you know, you're researching expensive LED lights, heaters, and other equipment like CO2 injection and automated fertilizer dosing systems you may not even need. Suddenly your tank's a high-tech setup when it could have stayed simple and stress-free. I've been guilty of this. When I first built my 55-gallon bamboo and vampire shrimp tank, I started with a Tidal 75 hang-on back filter. Then I swapped it out for an Oase Biomaster 250 canister filter. I even replaced the intake and outflow pipes with glass lily pipes, only to switch them back later because I wasn't happy with the flow. I also went through several different types of wave makers, all within the span of less than 2 years. Eventually, I realized that my shrimp and fish were thriving no matter what equipment I used, and that I was just chasing a vision in my head based on how I wanted my tank to look in my videos to you. I wasn't upgrading for the shrimp, I was doing it more for aesthetic purposes. Now, some of that equipment is just packed away in boxes. Maybe one day I'll use it again. But it was a lot of money spent, and the truth is, I could have kept my shrimp and fish just as healthy in a much simpler setup. The pros of upgrading your equipment are obvious. You get more efficient filtration, better lighting for your plants, and maybe a little bit of extra control over your tank's environment. It's fun to experiment and see what works best for your setup. And let's be honest, purchasing new equipment is exciting and even addictive. It makes you feel like you're taking your tank to the next level. But there are some real downsides to constantly upgrading. First is the cost. New and especially high-end equipment adds up quickly, and it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that spending more will fix everything. But more often than not, you don't need to spend that much. Shrimp tanks, for example, thrive on stability, not fancy gadgets. Second, overcomplicating your setup can lead to more stress. Too many devices can mean too many settings to fiddle with and constant adjustments. And even then, you still might not be happy. Sometimes the best thing you can do is step back and let your tank run itself with minimal intervention. And third, you might find yourself chasing perfection, always convinced the next upgrade will fix whatever it is you think is wrong. But the truth is, your shrimp and fish don't care if you've got the latest LED or high-tech filter. They just want a clean and stable environment. At the end of the day, less is more. The simpler your setup, the more you can focus on what really matters: water quality, feeding, and tank stability. So next time you're thinking about upgrading your equipment, ask yourself, is this really necessary? Or am I upgrading just for the sake of upgrading? Habit number 3, chasing perfection. We all start with a vision of that perfect shrimp tank or aquarium with lush plants, crystal clear water, and the exact hardscape layout we saw on Instagram or in a YouTube video. And we convince ourselves that once it looks just right, we'll finally be happy with it. But chasing perfection, whether it's flawless aquascaping, spotless glass, crystal clear water, or exact water parameters, can quickly turn into frustration. Tanks don't stay picture perfect for long. Plants melt, algae shows up, moss grows in places you didn't plan, and your tank's inhabitants having their own agenda, like nerite snails laying eggs all over your beautiful driftwood. If you're constantly trying to force your tank to match the image in your head, you'll never fully enjoy what's actually working right in front of you. I've gone through this myself many times, especially when I first started out in the hobby. I'd set up a tank, then tweak the design a few weeks later. I'd swap out the plants that didn't grow the right way I imagined, or rearrange the layout completely because it didn't match the vision in my head. What I didn't realize at the time was that all these changes were stressing out my shrimp and fish. But I was stuck in a loop of always wanting to change something and never fully satisfied. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with wanting a beautiful tank. Aquascaping for me is part of the joy. But when your expectations are too high or based on someone else's vision, you lose sight of the real goal: creating a stable, healthy, enjoyable ecosystem for you, your shrimp, and your fish. Real tanks are living, ever-changing environments. So if your moss doesn't grow evenly, your rocks or driftwood shift a little, or you get a little bit of algae on the glass, it's okay. It's normal. It's part of the process. Your tank may not always look like it did the day you set it up. Instead of chasing perfection, try chasing progress. Focus on keeping your tank's inhabitants healthy and thriving, stick to your maintenance routine, don't get caught up constantly rescaping or nitpicking every detail. Because if you're always chasing a perfect image, you'll overlook how far your tank has already come, and you'll never truly be satisfied. Habit number 4, never being content. In the aquarium hobby, there's always something new to chase. A new shrimp color morph or species, a different type of fish or plant, a better light, a higher grade filter, a cooler piece of driftwood, and somewhere along the way, you start feeling like what you already have just isn't good enough. This habit shows up in subtle ways, like scrolling online and thinking, my tank doesn't look like that, or walking into a fish store and suddenly needing just one more shrimp, fish, or plant you didn't plan for. You're constantly searching for the next thing to add, change, upgrade, or improve. I'm totally guilty of this, even to this day. There were times I'd finish setting up a tank and feel excited, only to second guess it a few days later. I'd move things around, go plant shopping again, or browse for more shrimp or fish I didn't really need. And while growth and experimentation are part of the hobby, there's a fine line between evolving your tank and never being satisfied with it at all. A couple of months ago, one of my vampire shrimp passed away. It was a pretty large one, around 4 inches long. I still had 9 others in the tank, but when I went to my local fish store, I ended up buying 3 more because they were smaller, about 2 inches, and in my head, that made it feel okay. My logic was that they wouldn't take up as much space as the one I lost. But what I wasn't thinking about was what happens later, when each of those shrimp reaches that same 4-inch size or bigger. In hindsight, I should have been content with what I had, but deep down, I wasn't. The truth is, no tank will ever feel 100% finished, but you have to know where to draw the line. This hobby is addictive, it's always evolving, but it can only stay enjoyable long term if you know when to stop and just appreciate what you have. There's real value in pausing and appreciating what you've built, even if it's not perfect or fully stocked. Being content doesn't mean you stop learning or improving. It just means you stop constantly chasing more for the sake of it. Your shrimp don't need a new scape every month. Your plants don't need to be rearranged every 2 weeks. Your tank doesn't need to be better to be worthwhile. Sometimes, what you have is already enough. So before you hit that purchase button or start tearing your tank down for another reset, take a moment to ask yourself, am I doing this because it's truly needed, or just because I'm not satisfied. And there you have it, 4 habits that can quietly hold you back from ever feeling truly content or satisfied in the hobby. Whether it's upgrading equipment, adding tanks, chasing the perfect scape, or always wanting just one more shrimp or fish, it's easy to fall into the mindset that more is better. But sometimes, the real growth in this hobby comes when you take a step back. You don't need the newest equipment, the cleanest setup, or a room full of tanks that you can't maintain. You just need to know when enough is enough. If any of these habits sounded familiar, let me know in the comments which one you've struggled with most. Also, I'd love for you to check out the description and pinned comment below for a link to my full shrimp food collection. Vita, my new vegetable blend shrimp food, is now available, but I want you to only purchase my foods if it actually makes sense for your setup. If you're happy with what you're using and your shrimp are thriving, feel free to stick with it. But if you're looking for something that's simple, nutritious, and will greatly benefit your shrimp, I've got you covered. Just remember, not every new product is a must-have. The key is knowing what works for your tank. Now, there are a lot of myths out there when it comes to shrimp, like what they need, what they can and can't live without, and what's just plain wrong. So if you've ever second-guessed yourself or heard conflicting advice online, I recommend watching this video next. It might just save you time, money, and stress down the road. And don't forget to subscribe for more shrimp keeping tips, guides, and advice. I'm Andy, thanks for watching, and I hope I made shrimp keeping a little easier for you. I'll catch you in the next one.